Hey everybody, I'm Jay Scherr with Jay Scherr Business Consulting. We help entrepreneurs, business owners, and other leaders maximize their potential, build rock-solid foundations for their businesses, and create more freedom in their lives. And you've joined Business Minds Coffee Chat. Peter Drucker is attributed to the quote, "The best way to predict the future is to create it." Well, on today's episode, we're going to talk about creating a successful and independent future, building and retaining high-performing teams, strategies for scaling businesses, the key habits and mindsets that separate successful individuals from the rest, and more. My guest is a wife and mother. She's no stranger to building success from the ground up. She's a former Philadelphia Eagles cheerleader and Fortune 500 corporate executive turned multi-million-dollar business strategist and mentor, an international best-selling author, keynote speaker, top 20 podcast host, and a philanthropist. Her coaching and consulting firm is widely known for creating 6, 7, and even 8-figure client success. She's an ongoing expert contributor on ABC, NBC, and Fox, and she's been featured in leading publications such as Inc., Authority Magazine, and Forbes. Please welcome the founder and CEO of Kelly Roach International and the woman who is empowering thousands around the globe to achieve financial and lifestyle freedom through entrepreneurship, Kelly Roach. Kelly, it is so great to see you. Thank you so much for being here today.
I am so excited to be here, and thank you for that amazing introduction. I hope I can live up to it here on the show.
Oh, I know you will. And quite frankly, we just scratched the surface, and I am really excited to talk about your own journey, part of your backstory, and talking about some of the ups and downs that you've experienced. Because when we look at something like this, when I read a bio and we see all the amazing things that you've accomplished, all the accolades, the businesses that you've built, we think that, wow, this person just had it all figured out, right? Everything has gone right for this person. What we forget about is the human experience. We forget the fact that in order to get to where you are today, that's part of a journey that included different seasons and different ups and downs. So why don't we start the conversation this way? I would love it if you would share with all of us maybe 1 or 2 words that you would use to describe yourself.
Ooh, okay. Disciplined and resilient.
Disciplined and resilient. Okay, so let's pull on some threads there. So why those 2 words? Give us an example of where both discipline and resilience has played an important role in your life, and maybe put some context around it. Share that story and how that impacted you.
Absolutely. Well, if there's one thing that makes or breaks your ability to build a successful business, it's your relationship with failure. Yes? So, as you said, after reading my bio, when you hear or see someone like myself or someone like you, Jay, that has had success and helps others to succeed, it's easy to look at that story and to assume that you're doing something wrong because you're struggling. Right? And,
Yes.
I think the most important thing that people that have had success can do to help others to also have that level of success is be transparent about the fact that there are so many failures tucked in between every single one of those things that you just listed on my bio. And, what I always tell people is that your relationship with 2 things will determine how high you go, how far you go, and how quick you get there. And those 2 things are imperfect action, your relationship with imperfect action, and your relationship with failure. And so for me, I think the biggest thing is my success has not come from being able to do things naturally or easily the first time, but having a really clear and precise vision for exactly what I want my business and my life to look like, and just being relentless in the pursuit of trying and trying again and learning, taking failure as feedback and gaining new information each time I try to ultimately determine what my path to success needs to look like. So, I think that the resilience thing, that's because nothing that's worth anything is accomplished quickly or easily. Nothing. Professional athlete, top performer in business, best-selling author, great speaker, we could go down the list of anything. Most of the people at my level will tell you that they had multiple businesses fail before their business succeeded. For me, my first company did succeed, and I took my first company to 8 figures, but there were so many failures wrapped into that. I mean, there was definitely a time where I was considering not even trying anymore to get it to that level, because I was launching, and I was actually losing money. I was losing money on my launches. And I was like, maybe this just isn't for me. Maybe I should just have this like one high ticket program. I'll just help a handful of people. I'll make the money and I'll call it a day. And I prayed about it and I reflected on it. And what came up for me was, Kelly, that is the most selfish thing that you could ever possibly do. Because when you quit something just because it's not easy, you rob all the people that you could be helping by figuring out how to solve the problem that you're facing, that so many other people are also facing, that you can only help them solve that problem if you first solve it for yourself. And so I put on my big girl panties and I said, we're doing this and I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep going until I get it. And so I know that was probably a long answer to your question, but I think it's really important for people listening today to know that failure is not a once in a while thing for successful people. Successful people fail more often than average people even try. That's what makes them successful people.
Wow, that is so good. So you hit on a number of things there, one of which I want to continue to go down a bit deeper, because I think it's something that we all experience. Some people are able to show resilience and courage and are able to continue to step forward and work through it, whereas others often give up because they lose belief or faith in themselves. So you mentioned about reframing the fact that at one point you said, boy, I feel like I'm going to I should give up on this. But then you realize that by giving up, you're really being selfish, right? Because you're not giving others the opportunity to experience what you're able to, the value you're able to bring, right? Whether it's a product or service. That's a mindset shift. That is reframing a storyline that we tell ourselves.
Yeah.
Talk about that in more detail. And what I'd really love for you to do is to share with us the process that you went through, because that's a big one.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this is what came up for me. And this is what I would say to everyone listening, right? In every moment, you have to make the decision as to whether or not you're going to become the person that your dreams require. Period. And when you haven't achieved something yet, when I was sitting in that moment and I was crying at the kitchen table and had my head down and really thinking about whether I even wanted this and whether or not I was going to keep attempting, even though I kept losing money and failing, I really had to ask myself, what would the person that my dreams require do in this situation? Would they be willing to settle and just give up and take the easier path because I don't want to deal with the pain of not getting instant gratification? Or would the person that my dreams require dust myself off, start a fresh day, start again, right? And try again. And the person that my dreams required would start again. And so, more than a process, it's a question. What would the person that your dreams require do in the situation that you're in right now? And if you ask yourself that question many times, there's something right in front of you that you haven't done or that you haven't tried. And we have this mindset many times when we're working hard at something to say, oh, I tried that. Oh, I'm doing everything. I can't work any harder. I can't do anything else. And, it's very interesting because in entrepreneurship specifically, we'll do something a few times and we'll expect to have it bring these like miraculous results. But we
Right.
know in life that that's not how things work, right? In life, to learn a new skill, to become good at something, and then ultimately to become expert at something, we know it takes 10,000 hours of practice. Most entrepreneurs will move on from a strategy or move on from a skill after attempting it only for a very few handful of hours. So, what happens when we do that is we sell ourselves short because we're just always starting over. We're always starting over all the time. And when you're always starting over, you're starting things but never finishing them, which means you're never reaching your goals. And so you have to decide to break that cycle for yourself and be willing to sit in the discomfort of your incompetence. And we hate feeling incompetent, don't we? We hate feeling
Yes.
incompetent. But if you want something that you've never had in your life or in your business, then you are going to have to go from being incompetent to competent in a new skill, mindset, or strategy. It's the only way you can bridge that gap. So I think that we have this really negative perception of incompetence, like we should never be or act incompetent. But in reality, if you want something greater for your life, you want to achieve a level of success, growth, profit, income, freedom, you have to be willing to go from incompetent to competent because otherwise you're not moving. Nothing's ever going to change, right? So I think that's a huge mindset shift that can help people.
Ooh, that is so good. So you mentioned about asking questions, right? You ask yourself a question
Yeah.
about the decision of becoming the person of my dreams, right? Is this what the person of my dreams would do in this moment?
Mm-hmm.
And I believe, and I've heard, I want to say it's Tony Robbins, but I've heard many others use
Mm-hmm.
these same words. But the
Mm-hmm.
quality of our questions determines the quality
Yeah.
of our life, the quality of our outcomes. And
Mm-hmm.
asking ourselves those tough questions, asking ourselves deeper
Yeah.
questions can really help to peel back the layers of what we should be doing and really
Yeah.
reflecting. So, along those lines, what are one or two big questions that you're asking yourself today? It could be about life, could it be about business, but the big questions that you're contemplating on. What are one or two of them?
Big questions. Well, I think that I'm a person of faith, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when we're super uncomfortable and we're hitting up against the same wall over and over again, I think that many times God is trying to move us, right? And, I think that there's always kind of the whisper and then the knock, and then ultimately the house gets blown down. Like we've heard that before, right? So
Sure.
I think the question is like, what am I being called to do in this next phase of my life and my business, whatever
Mm.
the case? Because I think that a lot of times there's, some level of incongruence going on for us, and that's what's keeping us stuck. And sometimes it's just an incongruence in our mindset. Sometimes it's an incongruence in the goal that we're pursuing. Sometimes it's an incongruence in how we're using the skills or the gifts that we have. But I think, really asking that question of, when you look at the gifts that you've been given and the things that you are naturally, innately good at and gifted at, why were you gifted those things? It's a
Mm.
very important question to ask.
Yes.
Why were you gifted those things? And how can you use those things to become the highest and best version of yourself, but also, in my instance, in my belief, to glorify God in the process?
Okay, so that's a really important question to ask. And when you're asking those types of questions, those deeper questions to really think and contemplate on, do you do you journal? Are you writing these things down? Are you just thinking about them, asking them out loud? share with us a little bit about how Kelly Roach asks the bigger, deeper questions of herself.
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, for me, usually it starts with, prayer, meditation, just kind of having those quiet moments with God to kind of reflect and discern. But then once I feel like I'm starting to get an idea of clarity or starting to have an idea of the direction, then I instantly go and start, mapping it out and taking notes and, kind of journaling. And then that helps me to get the next level of clarity to then ultimately start devising a plan.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. So first, I thank you for sharing part of your own personal process and also addressing faith. Now, there was a point somewhere along the line where you became, and I don't know what that point was, so if you can share it would be great. But there was a point where you felt more comfortable talking about faith and talking about how meaningful that is to you in a public environment, right? In podcasts, in your coaching, etc.
Yeah.
First, what was the catalyst, or when did that actually happen? When did that change happen? And how has faith influenced the way that you lead and build businesses? Has it had an impact and changed the way that you lead and build businesses?
Yeah. Well, to answer that question, I think that faith has been the central force in all of my success. So I'll start by saying that 1% or less of businesses achieve the level of revenue that I've achieved in my businesses, right? So it's important for me to acknowledge that faith was a huge piece of that because there's so much uncertainty in that process. And faith has always been such a strong personal anchor for me. So I'll start by saying that.
Okay.
Secondly, how has faith influenced my leadership and how I run my companies? My faith influences everything that I do all the time. And everything that I do the way that I do it because of that anchoring and grounding. And when I was scaling my first company, I built it around something called the Care More model. And it was really just this obsessive focus with how do we prioritize the client's results in working with us. Because when I entered the industry, what I learned really quickly is that there was so much hype and so much sales and marketing focus and so much focus on the sizzle, but there wasn't much steak.
Okay.
And so a big part of my faith was the kind of moral and ethical thought process around, I want to grow something big. I want to grow something successful. I really want to be able to put my name behind something that really makes a real difference in the world, right? And I think a lot of our success getting to 8 figures and beyond was really because we were so obsessively focused on the Care More model, and we were so focused on prioritizing client results that people had never really had that experience in that way before. And it really, really differentiated us in the market. So all of that was happening before I started sharing my faith. I built my business to 8 figures, never really talking about my faith. People that knew me obviously knew I was a person of faith. And even a lot of people after I started talking about it were like, obviously we knew just by interacting with you. But I wasn't openly saying, I'm a Christian. This is what I believe, talking about Bible verses, talking about how faith, makes our decisions and all that. I was never sharing that publicly. But then, so I, built the business to 8 figures, but then I got sued by a magazine for using the word entrepreneur. I'm sure everyone could guess who that might have been. So they kind of caught wind. Obviously, I was having massive levels of success in the market. They caught wind of, what I was doing. My business at the time had the word entrepreneur in it. It was, my brand was unstoppable, but it had the word. So they came after me and they basically were like, we're going to take you out of business. We're going to take you out of business. You're going to be done. We will destroy you. And so it was like a 2-year legal battle. And it was really the first situation in my life where I couldn't outwork it. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
Everything in my life had been built around whatever I want, I'll just do the work and achieve it. And so my whole mindset, my entire life was just kind of whatever I want to do, I'm just going to do the work and I'll just do it. And that worked until that point because there's nothing I could do. And what I realized in that instance, so I realized two big things going through that. The first thing that I realized was that my identity was not in the success or failure of my business. When all of that was going on and I was like, yep, I might lose everything. I might have to rebuild from nothing. What I realized is I still was happy in my life. I still was in love with my husband. I still was a happy mom. I still could have gratitude every single day. And I realized that that was because of my faith. So for me, it put into perspective the level of importance that faith had played in my life all along, in an instance where the only thing I could rely on was my faith because there was nothing I could do about anything that was happening. So that was part one. And then part two was that I realized that two things. So many entrepreneurs have been struggling so immensely the last couple of years. Burnout, just overwhelmed. Obviously, it's been a very challenging market, very challenging season in business, all of those things. And when you are someone like I was born into a family where faith was taught to me like from birth, right? So it's very different when you're a person that your whole life has been anchored in a certain construct to understand that there's a very large part of the population that has no anchor to anything. And so when things get really hard, they don't have anywhere to turn. Like they don't have that relationship with God. They don't have that faith life. And what I realize is that by me not talking about it and by me not acknowledging it and not sharing what a huge part of my life, my success, my belief, like everything that this was, that people thought that it was on my back or on my talent, I guess you could say, that I had the success that I had versus the truth, which was really that everything that you were able to do was just a gift you got from God. You use the gift that you were given. You are a good steward of those things. And so, I think it was just a huge sharp right turn for me because I realized I can't really be in integrity teaching what I'm teaching anymore if I'm not acknowledging that so much of my success is because of this. Because again, entrepreneurship is you're dealing with so much uncertainty and failure all the time. And it's such a mind, that when you don't have that, I think that's why less than 1% of businesses make it to $10 million. I think that's why 85% of businesses fail, right? So I just really wanted to be more transparent and courageous in sharing that part of myself because I feel like it can help so many more people. And I feel like it's important for people to know that. And I feel like, as a society, a lot of the problems and challenges we're having, specifically divorce rates and mental health crises and alcoholism and drug abuse and all of those things, it's when we are pursuing filling a void that's inside with something outside of ourselves. Right?
So true.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. It's really interesting to hear your perspective. And I noticed just kind of looking at your arc, if you will, that there was a particular period of time when you began to discuss that a bit more openly, and that's really interesting. So you mentioned a couple things. You mentioned identity, right? That the fact that you were not, you figured out that your identity wasn't tied to the outcomes, right? It was really, it was who you are, right? It's with what's within you. It's not the external things. And I think that's such an important point for all of us to think about. So for all of you that are watching and listening right now, hear those words, go back and listen to that again. And you see often, I'll use sports as an example because it's kind of a classic example, but when you have an individual who's involved in sports and they've tied their identity to being either a football player or a basketball player, and they're in the limelight, and that is what they do every day. And when their career ends or there's an injury and they can no longer play at that level anymore,
Yeah.
often, unless they have something else, something that gives
Yeah.
them purpose, something else that they're
Yeah.
anchoring to, they really go down a very deep rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And it's so difficult to see, right? To
Yeah.
understand if you've not been in that situation. So I think
Yeah.
you gave us something really important for us to think about.
Yeah.
And so again, I thank you for sharing that. Another thing that came to mind as you were talking about this was impact, making
Mhm.
an impact.
Mhm.
And you bring so much value to others who you coach, who you work with, who you listen to your podcasts, who are around you, around your ecosystem. What do you think about when you think about making an impact? And what I'd love for you to also share, if you can, speaking of impact, how do you measure impact? I mean, you talk about growing your business to a certain revenue
Mhm.
number, let's say, but is that impact? What is impact
Mhm.
to you?
Yeah. Well, I think the greatest reward in life is contribution. So I'll start by saying that. So
Okay.
to me, when I think about impact, I think about contribution, number one. Number two, when I think about impact, in my terms, I'm thinking about the number of people whose lives have been influenced for the good because of interacting with me. That's it. Right.
Okay.
So a revenue number is simply a measure of how many people were you able to influence in a positive way for good, which goes back to the Care More model, which is why I've been so careful in the way that I build to make sure I'm not building out of ego to get to a financial number. Not that I don't want to, of course, be profitable, make money. Like I love all those things. I love money and wealth and all of that. So nothing wrong with that. But I think that just not getting caught up in the wrong things for the wrong reasons is really important. And I also think that different people are made to make an impact on different scales and in different ways. Not everyone is meant to be a huge public figure with, millions of followers and on big stages. Some people are meant to serve 10 people in a really deep capacity and, make a really meaningful and lasting impact on their life, their business, their relationship, their wealth, whatever it is. So I think we have to be really careful when we think about that because I think that there's definitely a mentality, especially in the online space, that like, more, bigger, bigger, bigger. And that's coming from someone that like, I'm a builder. Like I love to build things. I have 6 companies. Like I love big and big is great and big is wonderful. But big is just an outcome of an investment in impact. It's not the reward. The reward is contribution. And I think so many times people get caught up in thinking that the revenue level or the level of influence or whatever vanity is the outcome or is the reward, and it's not. And when you get caught up in that game and you're doing something because someone else that you admire is doing it, but maybe it's not the right thing for you, that's when that incongruence comes in, that causes so many people. I mean, let's be honest, we have a mental health crisis in entrepreneurship. And I think a lot of that is because the business of mentorship, the business of coaching naturally creates a comparison mentality amongst people. And you have to demonstrate very good self leadership to be able to discern how to study people that you admire and respect without trying to be them and without mimicking and mirroring things that actually aren't healthy for you. And I think that's just a really important conversation for all of us that have platforms and that have achieved a level of success to share. And I say this to my students and my clients all the time, like, please don't try to be me. Please don't do what you see me doing. I am here to help you to discern how to use your gifts in a way that is a match for your skills, your life, your family, your goals. Don't try to do what I'm doing the way that I'm doing it because you'll be miserable. I'm on a unique path to me, right? There's things that I do that I can teach you how to do to use in your own way. But the moment that someone else's goals become our goals, that's when it just kills it, you know?
Ooh. My friends, you have just received an amazing gift, an amazing lesson. Your words are definitely landing and resonating with me. I know it. I know your words are doing the same for all of those that are watching and listening. It's such an interesting space to be in, the online space, vanity metrics, right?
Yeah.
Chasing the likes, the comments, the shares, whatever it happens to be. It really, to me, it goes back to something you said when our conversation first opened, and it was around the vision that you had for yourself, and knowing that your vision, knowing where you want to go, right? You may not know all of the steps, right? We don't have it all figured out yet. We don't have to see the entire staircase, as Martin Luther King Jr. said, but we have to take the next step. But also being congruent with your values, with your principles, those sorts of things. And when you're clear on that, when you're crystal clear on your vision, your values, your principles, the things that matter, why you're doing the things that you're doing, all of a sudden, all of those vanity metrics really don't make that big of a difference anymore.
Right.
We stop chasing that. And I think you said it so well that whether it's 10 people that we're impacting, that we're creating a positive, helping them create a positive life for themselves and being able to reach their potential. If it's that, fantastic. That's impact. It doesn't have to be 1 million followers or speaking on stages in front of 50,000 people. If that's what you want to do, and that's a gift that you have and a skill that you want to hone, fantastic. Go after it. But know yourself. Know yourself and work with the best that you can be.
Yeah. Exactly.
So good. Okay, so I would love it if you would spend a couple of moments talking about the importance of teamwork and building resilient teams. And here's what I'd like you to share, if you will, Kelly. You had a successful corporate career, and so we didn't go back in time too far, right? I gave just a general overview of your bio, but you were very effective at leading and building teams, and that carried over, obviously, into your entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah.
Share with us about building teams, the importance of that, and tie your own leadership advice into that as you're talking about teams.
Well, I mean, I think that you have to realize that, anything extraordinary that you're going to accomplish, you're not going to accomplish on your own. Period. Right? So to me, it's very simple, right? You're one person. And however great you are, doesn't matter how great you are, there are certain skills that you have and there's certain deficits that you have. And you need people to be able to complement you in order to bring the fullness of what you are capable of to life. And if you want to use your skills, your talent, all of those things, if you want to use those to the greatest good, then you have to be able to operate in your zone of genius. But not everything that needs to get done is ever going to be in your zone of genius. So if you're not complementing your zone of genius with team that can do all the other things around your zone of genius so that you can focus on your zone of genius, then you're going to be burnout. You're going to be exhausted. You're going to be frustrated, right? So much of burnout comes from spending your time and energy on things that just you shouldn't even be doing at all. People think it's from working too hard. We don't work that hard. We type on our phones. That's not what we do in the scope of the history of the world. We have the easiest that anyone's ever going to have it. So no matter where you are today, I just want you to remember, do a little research on how Labor Day came about. And Labor Day came about because of the unsafe working conditions. People were in factories, 120 degrees. It was unsafe. Injuries were happening, right? People were, being, the whole thing, right? So we have it easy. That's the bottom line. But you can't do extraordinary things without a winning team. And I think there's so many people that get overwhelmed or intimidated by building a team, whether they're fearful of the expense or they've had a bad, experience with people, or it feels like they don't know what to do or how to do it. It's a set of skills. So just like anything else that you do in business or in life, everyone's incompetent at building a team until they learn how to build a team. Everyone's incompetent at leading people until they learn how to lead people. And I actually just posted about this the other day, and I said, so many entrepreneurs think, I'll wait to worry about that until I get to 7 figures, 8 figures, whatever the case. And what they don't realize is once you get into the low 6 figures, if you don't start obsessively focusing on building a winning team, learning how to lead, learning how to manage, learning how to create culture, then you're never going to make it to that next level, because there's only a certain level that you can make it to in business that can be attained with hustle. And your girl loves to hustle. I am a hustler. But there's only a certain level that one person can achieve through hard work alone. At a certain point, there has to be multiplication and duplication of efforts, right? Leverage and scale in order to create those leaps in results. So instead of 1 + 1 = 2, it's 1 + 1 = 10. And that has to happen through team.
Oh, what a great way of articulating that. So let's stay on the topic of scaling then, because strategies for scaling, of course, a big one is the right people in the right position, the right leadership, right building teams, and delegating and helping others be successful, right? Setting them up for success, challenging them, but giving them the bandwidth to be able to do the things they need to do without you getting in the way and creating a bottleneck, right? So that's certainly a big strategy. Share with us a couple other strategies that you share with your clients, things that our listeners could perhaps think about putting into practice starting now.
Well, I mean, I think there's a couple big things that people miss. Most entrepreneurs do not have a scalable sales system. So they wonder why they can't grow, and they can't grow because there's no sales system, right? So I think that team and sales system are two of the biggest things. And then the thing that goes hand in hand with that is a lot of businesses are built in the business owner's mind. They don't have a service delivery system that will allow them, even if they figure out how to sell, how to retain hundreds of clients, because they don't have an infrastructure to support it, right? So you need the team to achieve the dream. You need the scalable sales system to get the clients. But you need the infrastructure to support serving the clients so you can keep the clients, so that you're not putting out fires in the business all day, every day, and dealing with constant churn and having all your sales just covering people that are leaving, right? So I would say those are kind of 3 things that work in a triangle together, right?
That's excellent. Thank you for sharing that. And for all of you that today maybe don't have some of those processes, the systems, the sales system, some of those things in place, don't let that stop you. Yes, it may seem like it's a big task to work through, but remember that you can do anything you put your mind to, but you have to set a goal around it, right? And then you have to take action. So just start small, do something today. And I think Kelly just now has given you some great things to look into. And then just align yourself with the right people. I know you can do it. Kelly knows you can do it. Take action, right?
Yes.
So, Kelly, we've talked a bit about some mindset shifts. What are some habits that you personally have had to either replace, or some new habits that you've had to build to help you become more of the person that you knew that you were capable of becoming? And where I'm going with that, if you think about if there was anything that was holding you back, is there anything that you specifically had to change, do differently, and build new habits or stack on new habits? What would it be?
Well, I mean, I would say that I always tell people, when you want to grow your business, start working out. Because, especially for someone like myself, I think you're my 6th podcast interview today. Okay. It's a lot of energy. It's a lot of energy. You know this, Jay. So,
Yes.
most entrepreneurs say, I'll just go, 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 go. I'll give everything to the business and then I'll work out later. I'll figure that out later. And what I always tell people, I work with a personal trainer myself, and I have to do that. I need the structure, I need the accountability, because energetically, if I do not take care of myself mentally and physically, I know I cannot perform at this level, let alone be able to try to perform at the next level.
Yes.
So, what I always tell people is, the entrepreneur mindset is very much like a shortcut of like, I'll deal with the mental health stuff later. I'll deal with the workout later. I'll deal with the spiritual stuff later. My marriage will come later. My kids I'll deal with later. I just got to grow the business. Once I get the business to this point, I'll figure all that out. And unfortunately, that mentality does not work out well. It never does. It crashes and burns every single time. So, first of all, I would say have a strategy for mental and spiritual health. Like, one of the greatest things that you can do for yourself for mental health is go for a walk each day. Sunshine, fresh air, and getting your steps in. Like,
Yes.
boom. Okay. That right there is life changing. Secondly, having time for real exercise, right? Investing in exercise. These are habits that when you talk to elite entrepreneurs, there's very few of them that do not have a rigorous exercise routine. There's a reason. There's a reason, because to perform at that level, you are a business athlete. And to have the energy to perform as a elite athlete, you have to manage your nutrition and you have to manage your physicality, your exercise, because that drives your energy, because your energy is what drives your business, right? So I think those are big things. Obviously, we talked a lot today about faith. I make time for my faith every morning before I start work in the morning, and that is very difficult for me. My entire life, I'm the girl that I will wake up at 5 a.m. and I will work for 18 hours, and I'm good. Like, I will not stop. I'm a machine. It's the way God built me. I have to force myself to say, no, I'm going to pray for 20 minutes. I'm going to meditate. I'm going to listen to the Bible. I'm going to stop for 30 minutes in the middle of the day and I'm going to do a workout with my trainer. I have to be so intentional about pulling myself back to do things in the short term that will impact my ability to be a good wife, be a good mother, be a good steward of my gifts, achieve my business goals. So I would just say for everyone listening, start with your mental, spiritual, and physical health, because that is really the foundation on which you build your business. I have watched so many people. I've been in the online space since 2012, coaching business owners, and I have watched so many people rise and fall and seen the stars explode in the sky, because when you compromise all of these other areas of your life in pursuit of success, it just never works out. It never works out. So, I'm homeschooling my daughter with my husband. I got that opportunity this year and I jumped on it, and it was like the best decision we ever made. And my daughter's very social, very outgoing, very well spoken. So I know she's not going to want to do this forever, but I'm like, I got a year. I am so happy that I got a year. And you know what? I say to people all the time, you will never regret that your business grew a little bit slower because you focused on your family. And my daughter's 11. She's old enough that she will remember this year for the rest of her life. I don't know how long she'll homeschool, but the fact that I got that privilege and that opportunity for even 1 year, I'm going to soak in every second I possibly can. So prioritize your marriage. I say date your spouse. Date your spouse. Invite your kids into the business. Let them be a part of what you're doing. Mental, physical, spiritual health. And then, like I said earlier, you have to be willing to sit in the discomfort and be incompetent. If you want to do something you've never done, you cannot have ego. You can't be in the pursuit of perfection and also grow, because growth requires an unraveling. It requires expansion. It requires vulnerability to try new things. Many of those things that you try are not going to work, but you learn something each time that is going to move you forward in that process to move you towards success.
Wow. All right. You just received a master class in entrepreneurship. And I want all of you to think about something here. These were not just words that was shared by Kelly, not just words. These are specific actions that Kelly actually took. So, we see a lot of things on social media, a lot of nice quotes, a lot of things that can make us feel good, but they're just words.
Yeah.
Please make sure that you are taking what you heard, applying it, and putting them into action.
Yeah.
Action is the step that's going to change, that's going to help you create greater impact, and that's going to help you create a more successful and compelling future.
Yeah.
So, Kelly, as we are wrapping up our conversation, if you had to distill, I'm going to put you on the spot here for a moment, but if you had to distill your life's work up to this point, if you had to distill your life's work into one sentence that you were going to leave behind for your 11-year-old daughter and for everyone else that you've touched and all the others who want to learn from you at some stage in life, what would that sentence be?
Oh, you're putting me on the spot, man. Okay, I would say it would be helping people to grow their faith so that they believe in themselves enough to persevere in making their dreams come true.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. Well done, Kelly. Okay, here is my final question to you. What is one of the most valuable, unexpected lessons that you learned from a client of yours? An unexpected lesson that you learned from a client?
I think just one of the things that I've learned over and over again is the resilience of the human spirit. And I'll give a specific example. We have a client, Betty, that came to us and was working with us for about a year. She found out that she had late stage cancer and had to start going through chemotherapy full on, lost all her hair, the whole treatment. And all the while, stayed in the coaching program, had such a positive attitude, went through all of her treatments. We actually worked with her team during the time when she was sick and she was not well and not able. And she had her highest year in business. In the year that she went through chemotherapy, lost her hair, was sick as a dog, went through the entire process. She's cancer-free now, did the whole thing. But I think just number one, it really puts things in perspective when you have an upfront seat to that with people. And number two, this woman had her best year in business in the year that she got the most devastating news of her life. She was dealing with sickness beyond belief. She was in a situation where there was nothing she could do about it, right? But have faith and belief and keep moving forward. And I think I just learned the resilience of the human spirit and that we can handle hard things. And, we make excuses all the time for why we aren't where we need to be or why we aren't doing what we're supposed to be doing or why it's too hard or why we're too busy. And I think I just learned from Betty, no, you can do whatever you set your mind to. And if it's important enough to you, you'll make it happen. And I think that it's so inspiring to see what we're all capable of when we don't give up.
What a powerful story. And thank you for sharing that. And wishes to Betty. Wishes to Betty.
Yeah.
So, Kelly, I want to thank you so very much for joining us today. You have truly been a bright light. This has been a brilliant conversation. You have definitely not only added value, I know right now, I can already tell you that there is someone who is watching and listening to us who has heard your words, whose life is going to change as a result of what you've shared today. We may not know who that person is, but I can tell you, you create impact every single day. And thank you so very much. I'm truly grateful for you. What a wonderful, wonderful conversation.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for being such a great host. It was such a fun conversation. And I hope everyone will just, stay fixed on the vision, be flexible on the plan, and go make their dreams come true.
There you go. You heard it, my friends. And I want to thank all of you for watching and listening. And I do have a quick favor. Would you please take just a moment to subscribe, rate, and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts? Matter of fact, while you're doing that, I'm going to provide a link in the show notes. You go to Kelly's podcast and do exactly the same thing. That helps us expand our reach and attract amazing guests so we can bring you even more value. And to listen to more podcasts, all you need to do is visit jscherbusinessconsulting.com, click that podcast button. And my friends, until next time, keep learning, keep growing. Please make sure that you connect with Kelly on the socials. Buy her books. I promise you it will be a game changer for you. And we'll see you on the next Business Minds Coffee Chat. Take care, everybody.